Here's the first major legal hurdle. The judge explains that setting aside a default isn't automatic. The defendant generally has to show both a valid reason for missing the hearing and a potentially valid defense to the underlying case. So simply saying, "I couldn't get Zoom working," may not be enough. And that second requirement, showing a meritorious defense, is about more than explaining how difficult the situation has been. The court needs something legally relevant that could actually change the outcome. Do you think her Zoom problem was enough to justify missing court?
The bank representatives from the bank are here and legal aid is here. Let me give a little history here. The summons and complaint was filed as a foreclosure action. Farmer State Bank repossessed this property as a result of a foreclosure. The parties were served with a complaint, and we had a hearing. Live in court by Zoom on, the first date was March 1st. And I signed the order on that date. The defendant had until March 11th to vacate the premises. No one showed up for the hearing.
I was having a hard time with my phone.
Yeah, that's not our problem. That's your problem.
I know.
You have a right to come here and be here. Anyway, no one showed up. A few days later, you got the order for default, and you filed a motion to set aside the default. That was filed on March 11th, the 10th day. You explained, in order to set aside a default, you have to have two things. You have to have a legitimate reason for not appearing, a good cause for failing to appear, and you have to have an indication that there is a meritorious defense. In your good cause for why you didn't show up, you said, "I could not connect to Zoom on my phone and had to re-download Zoom. I called the courthouse, spoke to the clerk who helped advise me on what to do." So you filed this motion to set aside the default. As for meritorious defense, you indicate in 2017 we refinanced our mortgage. We signed a paper that stated in case one of us passing, the surviving spouse would be the sole owner of the mortgage, balance paid in full. We tried to get the mortgage current before the sheriff's sale, and they refused my payment. Well, the sheriff's sale was 180 days. The sheriff's sale was a long time ago, and 180 days passes from the sheriff's sale before they can have this hearing. So, Ms. Beamer, what's your response?
Yes, Your Honor. Just simply that under the court rule, we don't think that the two-prong test is met. It's not a reasonable excuse for failure to log into Zoom under the first prong. And we've received, other than the statement in the motion, no other verified information or statement of facts that would establish a meritorious defense in this matter, and would ask that the defendant's motion is denied.
Ms. Wilson, are you actually in the house?
Yes, I am.
Who else is there?
Just me right now.
This is where the hearing gets brutally emotional. The judge clearly acknowledges how tragic her circumstances are, but sympathy and legal authority are two different things. She lost her husband, struggled financially, raised 4 children, and says she fought for years to keep the home. But the court now has to focus on deadlines, the foreclosure process, and whether a legal defense still exists. That's the painful reality of courtroom proceedings. A heartbreaking story doesn't automatically erase a completed legal process.
The kids moved out.
The sheriff's sale was a long time ago. me see what my notes say. And this is a long process that they have to go through to get this property back. This was filed in January. They served a notice to quit on you in December, and the redemption date expired as of November 11th. So the sheriff's sale was 6 months before November 11, which
May
had been
11th.
about May. And probably no payments had been made on the property for several years. And so people just are there waiting for bad news.
Well,
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did make payments for 2.5 years after my husband's passing. I figured that I could find the paperwork. I know that I feel like I've got nowhere with the bank. After my husband passed away, I went to Farmers State Bank 3 different times. I went to 3 different branches. I tried to get a copy and was willing to pay $1 per page for all of the original documents because I could not find my page stating that fact that the remaining balance of the mortgage we paid in full. The loan was based on both of our incomes. Finances had just been really, really tight since he's gone. He bought leukemia for 13 years, and it was just a struggle. We've had 4 kids, which they've recently moved out. They're all 18 and up now, but I paid for the funeral myself. I've had 2 accidents since he passed. I've been struggling, and a lot of these are the reason I fell behind. There were, kind of circumstances beyond my control, and I have tried my best, and this has been my home for 23 years, and I thought it was always going to be home, and I'm having a hard time. I've got $90,000 in equity. I feel like I wasn't really offered too many choices. I've read a lot about it, and I thought I should have been offered a loan remodification or something. I lost my main source of income. My husband was real sick towards the end, so my job was to stay at home and take care of him. I was a full-time caregiver. He was on a feeding tube and down to nothing. He literally needed help to stand, help to wipe, everything. So it's been a struggle, and then losing him, and I'm fighting depression. The kids all moved out, and my life has just been, I don't mean just to give a sad story, but yeah, I'm having a hard time.
Well, it's a very sad story, and I concede that, but your ship has sailed. As sad as this is, there was a foreclosure sale, a sheriff's sale in May. You had 180 days to redeem it, and you didn't do anything. So they started this action. Then you didn't show up for the court hearing because you didn't prepare your Zoom until 2 minutes before the hearing. So we were here. In fact, we stalled around a little bit, hoping maybe somebody would show up, and no one did. They're asking you to move. They're asking you to move like today. You and all your stuff. You no longer own this house. The bank owns it. And you haven't made any payment on it probably in several years. So you're living in this house without making any payment. And so theoretically, the money that you would have to make the payment should be in a big pile in the bank, but it never is because people use the money to buy groceries, pay the electric bill, make their car payment, pay their insurance. But you're living in this house that you don't own anymore, and you don't have the ability to redeem it. All the things that you're saying as part of your defense have all expired. And the bank is frustrated, and you are certainly frustrated. but you're moving to set aside the default. So the first question is, did you have a good reason for not appearing? The answer, in my judgment, is no. You couldn't get connected to Zoom. You didn't attempt to use the Zoom until 2 minutes before the hearing. You always
I
had the
did the
option
night before.
of coming to the court. So you didn't appear. In fact, I thought maybe you'd moved out. And then you did call later that day. The second question is, do you have a meritorious defense? And you said a bunch of things about how unfair you felt all this was, and the certainly very difficult circumstances that you were in. It isn't as though you willfully failed to pay your payments. Life came in a harsh white light, and your husband's illness progressed. You lost his income, you lost your income, and you had a loan on the house that you couldn't pay, and they foreclosed on it. And that is a very sad but true story. I believe everything you're telling me, but none of it amounts to a defense to the fact that the bank is legally able to foreclose on the house. At least nothing that I heard.
And there's the key distinction. The judge is essentially saying, I believe your story, but I don't see a legal defense. That's incredibly important. The court isn't necessarily accusing her of lying or ignoring what she went through. Instead, the issue is whether those circumstances legally stopped the foreclosure from proceeding. According to the testimony so far, the redemption period had already expired, and the required steps had already happened. At this stage, the timing becomes a huge problem.
Ms. Beamer,
payments in March.
I'm not sure what happened, but did you ever talk to a lawyer?
Just legal aid. I thought I could find the paperwork. I just was hoping and praying that I could find it. I went to the bank and tried to get copies. But the bank was never able to produce all of the paperwork. They had a section of 6 pages at one time. Another time.
What is your defense in there? That somehow there was an insurance policy or something, and then
it was part of the mortgage. Yeah, I thought I was going to have all this money coming back where I'd continued to make payments after my husband passed away. So I thought.
Well, I've never known of a mortgage that says if one party passes away, the mortgage is paid in full for the party that's left. I'm sure. I'm very doubtful that the mortgage has that as a condition in it. Are you aware of anything like that, Ms. Beamer?
No, Your Honor, and I know there had been communications between the bank and the defendant. The mortgage does not contain a clause like that, and no third-party coverage, claim, or insurance policy has ever been provided, nor funds for full payoff that would result in a claim against such a policy.
I thought if we didn't have 20% down, we had to have PMI insurance or something. I don't know if it was PMI insurance or is it in the application that we did? Because I remember we were sitting in the bank with Faith Gardner, and she said that the loan was based on both of our incomes, and that kind of helps protect us so that if we do lose one of the incomes, they knew he was sick when we did all this. I don't know. I wish Chris was here because I don't know. I remember him talking to his boss about it, talking to my dad, and he had peace of mind knowing that me and the kids would always have home. And I don't know. Is there any possible way I could? I know I've missed the redemption period, but I have been working, trying to come up with money to pay it off. Is there any way the bank would work with me and give me the possibility of paying it off still? And I've paid quite a bit on this place. I worked my butt off.
I don't know the answer to that. As I said, there was a legal process, and they posted it on your house. There was a sheriff's sale here at the courthouse on May 11th. It told you had 180 days to redeem it. So after May 11th, I don't know what was done in March, But after May, you had a right to redeem the property, and that didn't happen.
Because it was $50,000. I didn't have it. But I did I did have enough to get my account current in March, and they refused my payment, and that was well before the sheriff's sale. And I had enough to pay all of the late fees and everything, so I thought I read that if I was current before the sheriff's sale would be canceled.
I don't know about that, but you never filed anything in the legal action. So now it's at the 11th hour and 59th minute and 59 seconds, and you're raising all these defenses that perhaps should have been raised a long time ago. I don't know if you understand the gravity of this. There was a sheriff's sale. You had 180 days to redeem it. You didn't redeem it. You didn't file anything. You didn't, I don't know.
I didn't think I could afford it.
All right, well, you can't afford it, and they want you to move out. They bought the house back. They own it. And so you've been living there for a long time without making any payment. They actually wanted you to move by yesterday, March 21st, or the sheriff would come put your stuff out in the street. You are very close to the eviction process where the sheriff comes and forcibly removes you from the house. So that's how serious this is. Ms. Beamer, she asked several questions that I couldn't answer. Does the bank have any interest at this point in trying to redeem this?
Respectfully, Your Honor, no. This has been, there was 3 prior foreclosures. I mean, like I said at the first hearing, there's a bit of a history here. While sympathetic to, the tragedy of the circumstances, unfortunately, the process has occurred, and they're not interested in any redemption at this point.
Because of my husband having the pay.
This may be the most important moment of the entire hearing. The judge is telling her that the arguments she's raising now may have needed to be raised much earlier in the process. Courts have deadlines for a reason, especially in foreclosure cases. Once a sheriff's sale happens and the redemption period expires, the options can become extremely limited. So even if she had legitimate concerns about payments or the bank's handling of the loan, the question becomes, were those issues raised at the right time and through the proper legal process?
Yeah, and us having 4 kids and going clear to Detroit for his treatment. So yeah, we struggled, but we always got ahead. We always we recouped. We always figured it out. Usually it was me working 2 jobs while he was at home sick. I took care of the kids. I worked my butt off trying to get it recovered over and over again. I have $90,000 in equity. Well, I don't now, but so I just walk away with nothing. I wasn't offered any kind of loan modification or any. I don't understand why I couldn't have used some of my equity to help me get caught back up. I also had 2 car accidents. I paid for the funeral by myself. My in-laws, I could go on and on. Everything has just gone wrong, and I did try to come up with $50,000 during the redemption period, but that's a lot of money for me to come up with by myself in 6 months. But I tried. I have the ability to pay it now, but I know I'm past the dates. And
well, I can't force them to enter into it. They've gone all these steps. So have you done any planning to find a place to move to?
I've looked into it, but everything is expensive. I have 2 dogs, 2 cats. Everything is ridiculously high, and I was just hoping that I could figure something out and save my house. I have been packing. I have a storage unit. I figured, I'm not completely out, but so if I could have a couple more days, I can get it out. But
All right, at least you've done that. That was my next question. I don't take any joy in this. In fact, nobody does. The bank doesn't. Ms. Beamer doesn't.
I know.
The bottom line is you had a contract for a mortgage on this house, and because of life circumstances, you couldn't fulfill it. And now it's sad, but it's real. Ms. Beamer, my inclination is to give 10 days from today. The motion to set aside the default is denied. For both prongs. No good cause for failure to appear.
If the bank is gonna just resell the house, why wouldn't it be okay? I don't understand why they wouldn't let me pay it off.
Well, I guess that's always a possibility, but the problem is they want to get you out to resell it.
What if I can pay it today?
Well, you can talk to them about it. But I'm going to give you 10 days to move out by April 2nd. April 1st.
I didn't think I could afford a lawyer. I was focusing on finding that paper. The bank was never able to have all the paperwork. I don't understand why I couldn't get copies of it.
Well, there is no such clause in there that if one partner dies, the house is paid off and the other partner gets it. I'm not even aware of a mortgage like that. That would be an inducement for one partner to jump off a bridge or something. And there was no insurance that paid it. So your understanding of what it is not accurate according to them. And you've been fighting this fight for 14 years. And here we are, as I said, at the 11th hour, 59 minutes and 59 seconds.
What if I was able to prove that those other times where we were in late was because of excruciating his health? Us living in Detroit, his stem cell transplant, his heart attack.
Yes, I'm aware of all of that. But prove it how? That hearing that ship sailed. The property was foreclosed on. Meg, you have any input here?
Unfortunately, Your Honor, I'll say that Ms. Wilson did log in sometime after her hearing, but while I was still here, and so I did briefly meet with her. I think she tried to mention that a second ago.
Yeah,
and I think you helped her file a motion to set aside the default.
Otherwise, I told her that I had never heard of such a clause in a mortgage either. And that I couldn't evaluate the status of the redemption amount or window, or whether she's entitled to any surplus from the sale without seeing any of the documents. I suspect I shouldn't even speculate. And I did give her our phone number for an intake, but encourage her to get us the documents, and don't have any further record. So I think Your Honor has been pretty patient, or it's a terribly sad situation, but outside of the bank negotiating, I don't see any magic.
I don't see anything either. All right, Ms. Beamer. I think I know had Miss. I'll let you say your last. What else you'd like me to know to put on the record here?
I just wish you could order all the paperwork from the bank that's related to the mortgage, because I know for a fact my husband understood it the same way. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was in the event of something happening to one of the co-borrowers, the surviving spouse would be the sole owner. I know if that's
Well, they
where
would be the sole owner, but it doesn't mean it pays off the mortgage. So I'm sorry, you're in a difficult position and you're grasping at straws, but the bank is entitled to the relief they're asking for. I don't have to like it.
I know.
So the motion to set aside the default is denied. I'm going to give you 10 days to vacate the premises, or the bank can ask for an eviction unless you apply for and get some sort of a stay. All right. Thank you. This will go off as this.
And now we've reached the final stretch. The judge has made it clear that the foreclosure process is essentially complete, but he's also recognizing the human side of what's happening. She's already packing, has a storage unit, and is asking for enough time to move her belongings. This is where the courtroom shifts from deciding who legally owns the property to deciding how the transition will happen. The big question now is, how much additional time will the judge give her before the eviction process moves forward? Stay with this one, the final ruling is coming.